To the iCloud. Okay, everyone, so we're recording. We're starting the meeting now at 6:31. Welcome to Real Estate Masterminds with Leslie Smith. We're going to be going over how you look at listings today, which is, I think, one of the most exciting parts. Like every listing I get, I open it up and I think, oh boy, is this the needle in the haystack? Is this the new building that I'm going to have for years? Like, it's really fun, I think, to go through this. So we have Rick Suarez here, who's a real estate agent. And Rick, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yes, I'm Rick Suarez. I've been doing real estate since 1990, all forms, single-family residences, multifamily, development. I've even moved homes where you buy an old home in one part of the city, put a trailer underneath it, and you move it onto a lot at another part of the city. So currently I have 3 projects going in Los Angeles, 3 single family residents where we bought land or an existing home and we've added square footage, and one where we actually are building a home, 3,000 square foot home. So been doing also apartments, and that's what we're focusing on right now. Currently we have a project where we're looking at 61 units in Pomona as between a bunch of investors and myself as to purchasing. So,
and then I think one of the things that's important about your background is that when you worked with Turnstone, that you were really all over the whole Los Angeles basin finding properties, and that's how I met you, was through John Ward saying you were his bird dog, that you'd like sniff out the deals and find them all. So I think
right.
Interesting.
It had to do with homes, units, and land for development.
Yeah.
And also I had a short stint there for about 2 years with Marcus and Millichap, which is one of the bigger commercial real estate brokerages here in Long Beach at the World Trade Center in Long Beach.
Right.
But yeah, that's how I met Leslie. I was referred to her by John Ward at Turnstone.
Yeah.
And I've done a couple deals. I think we did one deal with Kevin, right, Kevin?
Yeah. I got my first triplex with Rick.
Yeah, so
So you know what I'd like to do is start, when you go through listings, we'll go through them, but I'd like to start with 2 things that aren't quite as obvious, and I'd like Rick to explain them. And one of them is a gross multiplier. These are ways, there's always different ways that you value buying a building, and any building is really like a small business, small cash flow business that you own. So there's different ways of looking at it. Some people look at it price per unit, price per square foot. There's gross multiplier, which is something that's a way that you, again, value the income versus the price of the building. And there's cap rate that, again, prices the building. And so in this way, people say, well, how do you know whether one building's better than another? This is how you really value them as small cash flow businesses, is look at the numbers on them and the gross multiplier, cap rate, and then price per square foot, price per unit. You look at the surrounding areas, you look at what you're looking for, but we're going to kind of go through the technical part, looking at a listing and how I look at them. Rick looks at them with different eyes. Kevin would look at them differently. Like, we all kind of have our ways that we approach looking at our listings, and we'll share that with you. So I'd like Rick to start, and we'll kind of talk about what a gross multiplier is and what a cap rate is. He'll explain that.
So basically, gross multiplier is just one way of judging one property in the same area against another property. One metric, I guess, that you would use to see if the property is in line or why isn't in line.
Okay. Rick, we're having some technical difficulty with you.
My internet has been going off.
Okay, keep going. For the moment, you're good.
Yeah, my internet's been going off. I have Spectrum, and 3 times earlier today this happened. I don't know why. Usually it happens during the rainy time, but it's not raining at all today. So
be quick and robustful about cap rates and.
So basically, gross rate multiplier is the purchase price divided by your gross scheduled rent throughout for the whole year. So if you have $100,000 home, $100,000 property, and you make $10,000 a year in income on that property, it's going to have basically a gross multiplier of 10. So that's one metric. The other metric is cap rate.
Let me add to that for a second. So with that, say like you have a building and it's, like he said, it's 10 times the gross rent multiplier is how somebody's priced it. So that's in a certain area. If you took the same duplex and you put it in Beverly Hills, someone may say, oh, this is a really great building. We're going to price it at 18 gross multiplier. So now that rather than $100,000 building, we're going to charge you $180,000. Whereas if it was in the worst part of town, they'd say, we're going to maybe only charge you the 8 times the gross rent multiplier. And so the building's only worth 80,000. So the gross rent multiplier goes with the potential of the building, the location, you know, when the building was owned. You come up with the number based on the area that you're in and kind of what the building is. And that's how you start to put them against each other. Can you add anything else to give a little more depth to gross rent multiplier?
Right. So what you want to know is basic, and then to come up with that gross rate multiplier, you have to start off with the real rents in that area. So that's why I say look at sold buildings only to compare it to, and then come up also with your real rents that you expect to get out of that building. Don't necessarily go by what they're putting on the listing because a lot of times it's not accurate. In fact, most of the times it's not accurate. So I do my own studies as far as doing a market survey as far as the rents are concerned, and I come up with a value, and then that's where I come up with a gross rent multiplier once I've nailed down what the real figures are.
Right. So what he's saying is this gross rent multiplier number is stated in a listing, and you'll see it in the listings, but it's also a little rubbery because you may buy it and the landlord hasn't increased their rents for a while, so the gross rent multiplier isn't really representative of what the market would be. So you have to know what a market, you know, you have to do your research, know your area, work with your agent to know what the market rents would be, to know where your building can go. And on the listings, they may say market rents are $1,600 a month, and you go out with Rick and you say, you know, they're saying $1,600, nobody's getting over $1,500 in the area. So you come up with this $100,000 building that they priced at a 10 gross multiplier, and you say, oh, I think we can get more than 10,000 in income. I think we can get 11,000 in income. So then by getting 11, like more in income, then the value of your building has come up, right? Because if you're valuing your building on the amount of income it brings in, like any small business is valued, then if you can bring up your rents, you bring up the value of the building, which would change your gross rent multiplier. And sometimes it's just called, like GRM is what it usually is in all of your listings. GR or GRM is what it is in the listings. Gross rent or gross rent multiplier.
Right.
So that's one way that people look at it. And then there's another way that's more cap rates, which is the second way, and that's more used in commercials. Commercial buildings don't use the gross rent multiplier as much as they use cap rate. All right, so you hear cap rate more with commercial buildings. But since we're talking residential, we use the cap rate too. So Rick, why don't you explain what cap rate is?
Yeah, so basically the cap rate is you take the gross rent and you come up with your expenses for that year. So everything we're talking about here is on a yearly basis. So you come up with that expense and then you come up with a net operating income. So if the property is grossing $100,000 per year in rents, and your expenses are $40,000 per year, then you subtract it, so you have an NOI basically of $60,000 a year, a net operating income of $60,000 per year, and you would take that divided by the purchase price, and it gives you a percentage or a cap rate on how much you're making on your money per year.
Right. So do you guys get that? You have to figure out really what your expenses are. So again, the listing would say what the expenses are. Then you look through and you go, well, I'm going to manage the building myself, so I'm not going to spend $12,000 a year on management. Or I'm going to, I will never pay that much because I'm going to do my own handyman work. Or, boy, they're really low on their maintenance in this listing. That's not realistic. We think it's going to be this. So when you're doing the cap rate, it's important that you can identify what your expenses are. And there are kind of typical numbers and things that people will put with a certain building, of certain type building. They'll kind of can guess and ballpark what the expenses are going to be per year, right? And plus you get, when you really get into escrow building, not necessarily when you're just putting offers out there or talking to people, you will see 2 years of statements that are the real rent rolls and the real operating expenses on that building. And then furthermore, you look at those and you say, oh, wow, their management company was really expensive, or they're way under, they haven't been doing any maintenance on this building. So you can see a lot from that, and that helps you determine what you're going to go forward with and what your expenses are going to be. So that helps you determine a price on the cap rate. And if anyone has any question, go ahead and ask. It'll become more evident and make more sense when we get into the listings. This is kind of an overview, and it is a little complicated because they're both dependent on each other. You know, the expenses are dependent, and you have to take the purchase price and divide it by the expenses, and then gross multiplier, times the income times the price of the building to get your gross rent multiplier. So it's a little complicated, but you just stay in it, and this is the intro, and it will become more evident once you start really looking at building.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned there are rules of thumb of what your expenses could amount to. And Leslie, I think I've seen you use 30% of gross rents as an estimate of all expenses. Is that for certain buildings and not others? How do you come up with 30%? Or when you want to get more accurate, do you just not use the rule of thumb?
So this is where you get into personally how people look at things. I believe Kevin really likes to map out his expenses with a building, and I kind of look at him at the expenses, and it's really rubbery. You know, if you have a vacancy and you say, I'm going to put hardwood floors in all my units, or I'm putting laminate in, or we're leaving all these countertops and we're not upgrading them, you can completely change your expenses. So to put the expenses into a category for me is a little tough, but you have to come up with something because you do want to value your building and know what you're going to be spending. I would say probably that Rick does that more readily than I do, because I really go more with the gross rent multiplier. I have other ways that I look at the building that you'll see, and I have certain ways I open up a listing and I go right in a couple directions, and Rick or somebody, I believe like Kevin, are more like they're looking at different types of numbers than I am, and that's what they go for first to weed things out. Right?
I think there's basically two scenarios that you want to deal with. One is the scenario where you're trying to compare your building that you're looking at to purchase with other buildings in the area. So that way you can gauge whether the deal you're looking at is really a deal or not. One. Two, whether if it's not a deal now, does it have the potential to be a deal in the future, because maybe it's managed incorrectly. In other words, the rents are not where they should be because bad management. You know, people just aren't on top of the rents, don't know the area or whatever. So that's an upside to that purchase, and which means that's an upside where you can increase your cap rate on this property. So if all the cap rates in the area for the same type of building, same units are, let's say 5%, and you're seeing this building has already based on the price is already at 5% without even doing anything with the rents, okay? That right there tells you this is a deal already at 5%. If the rents are low and you know that you can push these up, I'm assuming there's no rent control in the area, to maybe a 5.5%. So now you realize, guess what? This deal now turns into a real deal, because maybe now you're at 5.5% for the same price where other buildings are at a 5 cap. And so that's why you want to find out your expenses. And the same thing with the expenses. On bigger buildings, you have to assume that almost everybody is paying a management fee. So you put that in. You may not do that, but to get the accurate value of that building, you have to make your assumptions on what everybody else is doing. Then you can come up with a value. Now, if after you purchase, you decide you're going to do your own management, you're going to raise rents, you're going to get solar to maybe mitigate some of the electrical issues, you know, or costs that you're incurring right now per unit, things like that, that's something else. But initially, to see if it's a deal or not, you kind of have to look at what are expenses on other buildings. And that's information that you probably would get from a real estate agent that you're working with, who he knows what other buildings are paying for expenses at the time.
So Rick, what percentage do you plug in just as when you're looking at listings in an area or 1960s buildings? Do you have a percentage, 30%, 20%? Do you have something that you plug in?
Yeah, we haven't seen 30% in a while, at least not for regular deals. I mean, I'm seeing 36 to 40% with management.
Yeah.
On properties.
So that's with management, and are you counting vacancy in that, or is vacancy accounted for to reduce the income, not as an expense?
Well, right now, in other words, we're counting the vacancy there. I always assume at least a 3% vacancy, and then lower, you know, when the market's a little slower, I'll do 5%. But right now, almost everywhere is 3%, at least here in the Southern California area, metro area.
So 3% vacancy and 36% expenses, or is the vacancy already captured in the 36%?
No. 36% for expenses, and then you add the 3% vacancy.
Okay.
Yeah, and some people do it differently. I like to separate one from the other because the vacancy can change. Your expenses are pretty, you know, other than your insurance, everything else is usually pretty stable. Utilities don't go up that often, although I don't know what's going to happen here shortly. But
yeah.
Sorry, Rick
Yes.
and Leslie, just wanted to let you know, as someone who's newer to this,
Yeah.
you guys totally lost me about 5 minutes ago. Kevin's question, because it would really help me to see the actual listings and start looking at the numbers as we're talking about it. Because I was, you know, I'm brand new to cap rate, and then getting into vacancy and whatever the 36% was that completely went over my head.
Okay, so fantastic. So let me address this. So I personally, and I think probably everybody would be mortified, Kevin and Rick and everything, I don't really look at the cap rate that much because it is complicated like this. And for me, it's dependent on how you run the building and how they ran the building and how the neighborhoods are running their building. And you can kind of get a sense of, like, in Long Beach right now, everything is 4.5 or 5% cap rate. So you can see, like, all the values are about right there. But for me to go into what my expenses are going to be or the neighbors, I don't value buildings that way. So you pick and choose. Like I said, some people go in by door, by price per square foot. I go by gross multiplier. Most people use cap rate. It's a little too complicated for me. That's just it. So let's go forward, and ultimately you'll pick a couple different directions that work for you. Maybe you totally get cap rate or you don't, or whatever. But cap rate is pretty standard, but it doesn't work for me. It's too complicated.
No, I'm open to, I'd like to understand. I was just letting you know that it was a bit too much information.
Yes, and I'm saying I've been in it 16 years and it's too much information for me. All right, so here we go. So I'm gonna go to a screen share. Let me find, Wendy, where would my screen share have gotten? Here we go, there we go, screen share. Okay, can everyone see my screen share? I've got a listing here, or an email. All right, so these are listings like you would get from Rick. So Rick has sent me this, so you're gonna go through this with me on exactly what I would do if I open this up. And
I know this one.
Likely is I will have, let me minimize this thing. Likely what I will do is have Rick then go through one, although he may get highly technical and into, my guess is really into the numbers, and I'm more skim it on my first round to look at something, and then I dive into the numbers more. So he sent me this, and I open it up. I go, all right, it's in Hawthorne. I think that's not rent controlled. I'm not sure.
No, it's not.
It's not rent controlled. All right, 3 units, 3,600. All right, so that's one of the first things I look at is square footage. So these are big units. They're 1,200 square feet each. So they're probably probably 3 bedrooms at least, I would guess. The gross scheduled income, so it's making about 81,000 a year, and it was built in 1965, right? So that's just our starters with it. There it is, pretty decent building. Looks like there's a driveway, so there's probably parking in the back. Then I would go down and I would look. So some people start looking at this. We'll read this here. We are pleased to present the address. The subject property is located in a great area of Hawthorne with easy freeway access and near the future NFL stadium. Each unit is a townhouse style and an immaculate condition with 3 bedrooms and 1 3/4 bath. So that is a pretty, this is a really unique property. So for $1.1 million, I would look at it and go, that's pretty interesting. There's a lot of redevelopment in Hawthorne's happening. Kevin, I think that's where you live, right?
Yes, it is.
Exactly. So, so let's look at it. So my next thing would be, my personal next thing is I want to know where this is. If the freeway's across the street, if the it's in the flight path, if it's on a busy street, if it's across the street from a school, if it's on a big alley, if right across the street, which I can't see in this picture, if it's a big Vons or something, or some industrial area. That's what I personally would need to see next before I give this any more time. So I would go down and I'd say, okay, here's this. I don't know why it won't scroll down anymore. Rick?
No, why?
You're at the bottom.
That's it? There's no, okay, so it's just one sheet.
So just click on the map.
Yeah, so I would look at this and I would say, well, okay, where it is it in Hawthorne? You can see this image, can't you, everybody? Right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll see a little further. That's the 105, but where is it in the middle of things? So it's right at the 405. So it's in this nice little intersection, the 405 and the 105. So that's interesting for me. I didn't know that Hawthorne went down below the 105. I thought this was all kind of South Central-ish. So I'm surprised.
That's pretty much the limit right there.
It is. Okay. So the fact that it has a Hawthorne address, but it kind of is in the hood, don't you think that's kind of the hood, right?
It's not a great part of Hawthorne, but it's also not the worst. If you
Right,
get
so
to
And for anyone else,
Prairie
just so you
Avenue,
can
it gets worse.
see where this is there's the 110, and here's the property up here, right? You know, close to the freeway, but I don't think you would hear it. And I happen to have a building right here. I have one just right off Vernon, right there. And mine is definitely in the hood.
Yeah.
So,
And you can see Prairie Avenue on there.
Just here.
East of Prairie is considered much worse. And so it's well away from that. So I'd still say it's decent, although not great.
Right. So if everyone's getting that, like east of over here, this is rougher area. And then this is again where how you really have to know your areas, or have somebody like Rick, or even already Kevin knows his areas well enough to know that this side of Prairie is better than that side of Prairie. So if
The other thing too is the flight path there is almost right overhead.
So where is the flight path? I know that there's a Hawthorne Airport, so I'm going to back up a little more. Where is it? Is it down in here?
Well,
No, for LAX.
LAX, yeah.
Oh, LAX, because there's a Torrance Airport.
Yeah, no, but LAX is right there to the right of the
Oh,
picture. If
yes. Okay.
And there is a Hawthorne Airport, but there's no jets out of there.
yeah.
Okay. So, all
So,
right.
but you're renting it. You're not living in it, but some people have issues with that. So just know that.
Yeah, and this isn't that, you know, if it was right
No.
here, it'd be a different thing. Okay, so now I know that it's got an okay area. I'm going to go in a little more again just to get, okay, so it's just there. There's nothing.
You can actually do a street view if you want, right? If you click the other tab, if you want to see the front of it.
Right, so there we are with it. Here it is, right? And I would kind of look at the street. Whoops, sorry, back. Looks like a good street. You know, trees, that's definitely better than no trees. Looks like what I would expect in Hawthorne. No surprises. Then I would move forward and say, okay, I'll look at this further. Then what would I do? I would go down and I'd say the net operating income. So they're saying that it was 81,000 in income. They're making, this is where, Wendy, you start getting a little bit into these calculations. Gross scheduled income is all of the income that you're scheduled to make. So they're saying that after expenses, they're netting out 52,000. So that's where you start dividing this 52,000 by the asking price, and you start getting the cap rate. And so you can kind of see how it falls in with its other buildings in the area. So where's the cap rates and everything on this listing? Rick?
Right here, right, you just passed it. Right, keep going just a little bit up.
Can you screen share, I wonder? Because when you go over it, you should be able to screen share.
Right there, there's cap rate. See where it says on the line on the, there you go, now go to the right.
All right, so these are your numbers. Where's the gross rent multiplier? None?
Yeah, I don't know that,
So that would be strange to me that they didn't do a gross rent multiplier. Don't you think?
yeah, you know what, the display on this isn't the greatest for units, unfortunately, with the MLS.
So this, are all of yours in this format?
Yeah, so yeah, for the client it is.
Okay.
So I, for example, I can see those numbers on here.
But we don't get them. All right, so that's interesting.
Well,
So-
would you trust them though?
No.
Yeah.
Right,
No.
but it's a start. The pricing is something that you can trust, because the pricing just makes, you're either making the money right now or you're not. You know, like if they say their income is so, you would confirm it, but you could see how they priced compared to the income.
Well, but this is real easy to calculate right now. If we're looking for a gross rate multiplier, they're asking 1.1 for this, right?
Yeah, so you
Just take the 1,100,000 divided by, we know what the gross schedule income is, 81,600.
see that right there? That's where she's, so Wendy, so everybody, you're seeing that we take the to get the gross rent multiplier, you take the
Purchase
price
price.
and you divide it by that 81,600. And you come up with, what's the gross rent multiplier, Rick?
13.48.
Okay, 13.48, which to me sounds high for that area. Sounds high for Hawthorne. That seems like a lot nicer area gross rent multiplier to me. But again, then you start getting into, like I'm saying that's a high, 13.8 is high for that poor of a neighborhood. But see, they're pricing this higher because they know that it's probably because they know the stadium's coming in. And people are starting to up their prices in anticipation of the area developing. Wouldn't you say that's what's going on, Rick?
That and also they believe that they can get $26.95 in pro forma rents also.
Right.
You see, they're currently getting $2,400, and $2,000. The agent believes that you can get $2,695 per unit.
So where is, I'm seeing.
Right there, right
Yeah.
there.
All right, so they're saying that you're getting, the actual rent is $2,400. So let's move down, you guys. So this is what they're saying, is that this building is making this $81,000 a year. But we know rents can change. If I go put in nice floors, if I put in a granite countertop, I can get more rent than I was getting. If I clean up the units, it said that they were very nice. I'm gonna go now back up to the description. Are they all redone? And it just says, I think it says each unit is a townhouse style and is immaculate condition. So what's too bad is this doesn't have any more pictures, right, Rick?
If you click on the picture, you can go into more of them. And then
Yeah.
One of
the
8.
best,
Okay.
the best view is probably to click the little 2-box
I got it.
icon there.
So here's one of the interiors of the units, which looks like they've got some tile floor in. And that kitchen definitely is new from the 1959 construction. They maybe did new cabinet fronts, but we can't tell really.
New knobs maybe at best.
Yeah, and maybe yeah, new knobs, and then it's still got the white tile, so it's really not updated. It looks pretty spiffy though. The knobs look good. It's all white, so they've made the best of what they have. And there's our little staircase, another kitchen, beautiful fireplace. So that's it. So you don't usually get much on the interiors because they can't really get into the units. So it's kind of you have to just guess. And if they have redone one unit, they will usually put that in the listing because they want you to see the nicest unit and the potential, but you have no idea what the other units are. But,
Right, and if you notice, there's no sign on the front of these units because they usually don't want the owners or the tenants to know that they're for sale till the very last minute. So most of the time, I'd say 9 times out of 10 on stuff like this, you're going to be writing an offer, what they call subject to inspection. Okay, because they're not willing to show it to everybody unless you're serious. And how they gauge serious is by writing an offer, and you write it up full price, subject to inspection, just to get you in there and look at the property. And everybody knows the game. They know that you're going to look at it. The owner's going to give everybody 24-hour notice that you're going to show up, and that he's going to show up, open the doors, and let somebody in there to look at the property. And the owner, if he's got a good agent, has been told by his agent, you're going to get an offer at full price. It's going to be a subject to inspection. Understand that once they see the property, they're going to come back and probably decline the offer and put the real offer that they're going to put in. And that's the real one. Because as long as you write the subject to inspection clause, that's your exit, your escape clause, as you would say, for that original offer. What
Right.
you're trying to do is just get in there and look at it.
right, so you guys get that. You're writing an offer on a building you've really only seen exterior shots on. But you have a way to get out. So it's just, it's respect for the tenants that you can't see anything before you've got the accepted offer, just like Rick said. Any questions? I'm just going to put it out there right now before we move on into like the pro forma and the rents and all. Everybody's following along? Okay. All right, so we're going to go forward and talk about the unit. So the rent is the rubbery, the rent and the expenses are the rubbery part about buying a building, because it depends on, like I said, you're putting in granite countertops. If you're redoing the cabinets, if you look at that tile floor, someone could go in and say that tile floor is outdated. We're going to go and put in laminate. We're going to take the carpet out that was on the staircase. We're going to spend $7,000 on each unit, but then we're going to get rent, and we're going to take it from, and I'm going to show you here. We're in the unit information now, which is right here. And so they're going to say, well, the rents they're getting right now, which is the actual rent, and then the pro forma or market rent is the same thing. So in some listings, you'll see that it says market rent, and others it says pro forma. They're both the same thing. So this listing and this agent is saying that you are receiving a building that says $2,400 a month in rents. One is $2,000, so those are the real numbers, but they think that they're all $2,600 a month rents. So they're thinking there's that much upside in there. So they're pricing it probably accordingly as well, thinking this is really the value of the building, is that you can have a $2,700 a month units. Now it's up to you. My thing would be next, and I'm not going to do it now, is I would go on Craigslist and I would start looking, or go on Redfin or Google this property and start trying to look at, for starters, I'd try and look at old listings. So if I type the address in to the bar, it will bring up old listings for the units that have been for rent here. So I can maybe see the interiors of some of the units if they're still listed up there. And that's probably only if they've posted something for rent in the last 2 years. If they haven't, and that's even a little bit of a crapshoot whether you'll get anything online that would show you more interiors. So then I would start looking, besides trying to see the real interiors, then I would go and see what else is renting in the neighborhood. And
Why don't you actually do it? Why don't you just Google the address and see if there's any more listed?
To see the interiors. Okay, well, so
Yeah, I think it'll be more memorable
if I can,
that way.
oops, command copy. All right, we're gonna go here. That's weird that it said number B. I don't know why it said B.
That is weird.
Hawthorne, Zillow. Zillow has one photo. Let's see.
Hmm.
It's the whole building. I'm hoping they'll have a unit. We're pleased to present. Oh, you know, it's just because it's for sale. There might be one of the units up here. I'm not seeing. So these are all the listings for the unit, and I don't see any. You know, this might be interesting because Kevin is working with me on my buildings, and we can go put in the address and pull up our my old ads, and I can say, oh, this unit's coming up. Let's look at this. Looks like maybe this would be one. Unit B. It's interesting. It's not showing the units.
So you can sometimes go, I scroll it all the way up. Oh, well.
I'm at the height of this.
No, but go back yeah, go there. Now go to the top.
Yep.
Now where it says images,
Where's that? Images, right here.
right there.
Oh, I've never done. Okay, look at this, you guys. I didn't know that that's a possibility. So
It's you have to verify though. Understand
Yeah.
that.
what?
You
Unverified.
have to verify that. You click on the picture and make sure that somewhere some site is referencing the correct
But
address.
this is likely it because this is unit 1, and
Yeah.
we can see that the
No, this is not it.
No, different address.
It's a different address.
right. So I've never done it this way, and when I do Google Images, you're right. They start just putting lots of stuff in. So we don't know what this is. I would only.
Oh, and you know what it is? Scroll it up. You only have the address with a unit number. You don't have the city. If you put the address with the city, see right there? Just put Hawthorne. And you shouldn't have. There you go.
No, it's not really giving us anything else. And these are all imposters. So we can't trust
Yeah.
them. And this might be it, but this might not be it. We don't know.
Yeah.
This could be the back of the building, but we don't. Well, here's another picture of the front. So we don't now. So now let's go back to our building, which where is it? Right here? There we go. So let's see about the parking. It's probably 4 or 5 spaces in the back. Where's the parking on this?
It appears to be in the back. It has 3 spaces
3 spaces.
and
So you
3
got
garage spaces.
3 garage spaces. So that's good. I'm not really wanting to buy a building without parking. And I did, and I have a couple, but when I go to rent them, it's becoming problematic because Long Beach is getting pretty busy. And so that's kind of important these days, is what the parking spaces are. So, okay, so then I would go in and I would look through all different units online and try and see whether people are really getting 2,700. So I think we should move on to another listing. That was a nice little view through this. Anyone want to add anything, Kevin, or anyone questions anything before we go on to the next listing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just comment on the rents. I think 2,400 is them keeping up with the rents. And if you did a nice renovation, I really think you could get those pro forma rents, but I doubt without it.
Right. So then what you would do, you guys, you would say, if I put 5,000 into each unit or 7,000 into each unit, I can get this 2,700 that they're projecting. Now, is it worth it for me to put 15,000 into the building and do the flooring and the countertops? Well, you have to talk with your agent, pull up comps, really know what's going on and know whether you want to do that. And then if you're going to put 15,000 into the building, then this 1.1 is really not 1.1. It's 1.115, right? So you've changed your outlook on your building. But all of them take money. Like you always go in and put some money in. To me, it's part of the deal. Even if you just raise rents, you're going to have some turnover, and you're going to know that you're going to have some output. You don't just take the rents up without a little bloodletting. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Where would that be? Here we go. We're going to click here, see what other gem Rick has found. Okay, this lovely place, and this is in Long Beach. 2 units for 820. So this is about 420 a unit. So these are 1,100 a unit. Remember, our last ones were 1,200 a unit, so 1,100 square feet a unit. And this is $410,000 per unit. So this is more expensive.
However, this is Bixby Knolls in Long Beach, which is a higher end area.
Right. So when I even start looking at going 420 a unit, it must be a nice area. All right, another 1960s building. You find a lot of that because these buildings are so affordable and they're small. Of course, you know, they're not making these small duplexes so much anymore. So most of them are older, like 60s, 70s, 50s, 80s buildings. All right, so here we are in Cedar. I know 36 in Cedar area. We're gonna go down and find the map. See if it's by the freeway or if it's kind of okay. Looks okay, I'm gonna go in on it. Seems to be okay, I guess. And I'm gonna go to the street view. I think that was it, or maybe that was it.
That's it.
Looks, now I would wonder, is that a school? No, looks like it's the back of an apartment building. But I might even go back and try and go back to the map and try, I don't know, I can't really tell. So I might ask them.
You could turn on satellite.
Where's satellite?
Where it says map, see where it says map, the little drop down?
Yeah, so it looks like that was this that I was looking at, right?
Yes.
Which looks like a building to me. It looks like maybe a pool and it's just a building that faces that way. That's not a school or anything bad. It's a residential building. So I would say this passed the map test.
Oh yeah, that definitely is going to pass the map test in that area.
Right, but it could be across from a school or, you know, I don't know what. There was a hotel. There's a great area. I have a building and one block up. I was like, oh, good. My building's at 800 Coronado and this one's at 900 Coronado. But right across the street, it had a daily hotel. So anyway.
So before you go up, just a little input.
Yeah.
This is what I look at buildings also, because I'm always looking at what add-ons can I do or what can I do to make more income on a property. And for example, this is only 2,100 square foot building, which is about 1,050 square feet per unit. And if you notice, the lot size is 7378, where your normal city lot's about 5,000 square feet. There's a possibility, you know, especially if you look at the picture, all of that green lawn there, that you may be able to add one bedroom in the future to each unit. Okay, and one bedroom's not that expensive to do. And now you increase your rents and you increase your value also. And you take advantage of the lot size.
Right. And what is this little red arrow? Previous price.
That it's been reduced in price.
So it was 835, they reduced it 15,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I would look at if I was interested in something, days on the market. And does that come in this listing? Because if it was on the market.
Yeah, right there. See the blue number?
Yes. So days on market is right here. So
you can click on the number and it'll show you the history.
Yeah. So I don't think I'll do that, but you can look at the days on the market, you guys, and know, oh, if it's like 60 days on the market or even 46, you know, they're kind of looking for some offers and they've lowered their price. So you might have an opportunity there. All right. So the net operating income is 16,900. It's a 60s building. There's something else, and I don't know what it is. Like, Rick, something about the pipes on a building, like before 64, they're underground, and after 64, they're in the walls. Do you know if there's something?
Oh, you're talking about raised foundation and slab?
There's something that somebody said at one point, you know, they changed the plumbing in 64 or 67, that there was a year. I haven't bought a building in the 60s since I heard that, but there was something I thought about, you know, stay before or after that year.
Yeah, they run the buildings built after the 1960s, in the 60s and newer are usually on slab foundation, and they run the plumbing up along the walls. And instead of running them in, but there are some people who actually ran plumbing into the slabs, which is crazy because to get to your plumbing, you have to literally break the slab to get to it.
Yeah.
So, but that isn't usually the case. It's usually run along the walls. And if you have an issue, you have to deal with that.
Right. So just so you guys know, 2 of my buildings I have had to have full repipes. So now the buildings are worth about $1.6 million, but it was at like 20,000 or 30,000. I did it in different section times. About 20,000 and now maybe it's 25,000 to do a full repipe on a building. So you may not have to do it now, but you kind of know it's going to need it. So a repipe is kind of a big expense. I don't think it's a deal breaker to me. It's part of owning a building for a long time. I've done a couple of repipes, but it's all fine.
What you're looking not to get is galvanized pipes.
Well,
So-
mine are all galvanized, and they were all under the ground in my three of my buildings. So one in the 50s is holding, and I haven't had to repipe it, but the other ones are, they definitely need a repipes like within the first year of having them. But it was fine because the market was going up so much. I honestly, it was all good, and my rents were going up, the market's going up, so I wasn't really bothered. Okay, so then the operating income is the $4,000 a month, which is, no wait, what's,
No.
sorry, expenses. These are the expenses that they're saying is what it is, which I would wonder about that. I don't see anything that's ever that low. So you would look at what their real expenses are.
Right.
And then you go down, there's gas dryer hookups in the kitchen. So they have laundry in the rooms, it looks like, or at least one, which is really good. That's really a big deal. That makes it a lot nicer. And I would, at this point, you know, it's not, what's the cap rate on it? Where's the cap rate in this? Annual income? They didn't give us a cap rate. So the cap rate and the gross rent multiplier on these small buildings like this, they're more owner occupied. They're not as good as cash flowing investments. So sometimes, like you can see on this listing, and like Rick saying, this is maybe just somebody selling it. It's not a big investment income firm, so that they don't even have the cap rate or the gross rent multiplier on here. And
But let me, I'm sorry, Leslie, but let me just tell you on this one, there's two issues here. First of all, the owner probably lives in one of them because there's no rent on one of the units, if you can see right there. The second thing is that the unit is only $1,750 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in Bixby Knolls. That's crazy. It should be much higher than that. In fact, they show that they should be at $2,350. So that income that you see up there is only for one unit per year. So even that's why they probably didn't even bother to put a cap rate here, because it's so inaccurate from all different perspectives. One, the rent is so low, and in the other one, there's no rent. So you have to do your own calculations on this one by finding out what the true rents are. Again, don't go by the pro forma rent that they have there. Use it as a somewhat of a guide, but find out what your own what you find out the rents are in those areas.
right.
Because that's how you're going to come up with a true value of the building. You can use, you know, like Leslie said, there's Zillow, but I tend to use apartments.com, and I use Rentometer. And apartments.com, the reason I like it is because, like this building, we know the square footage of it. So we know each unit here is, how big is this one?
Go back up here and
Oh, yeah, 1,050. So the great part about apartments.com is that you can go into an area, and 9 times out of 10, they'll show the square footage of the comp for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Because you can have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath that's 600 square feet, and you can have it in another building that's 1,100 square feet. Well, obviously, the 1,100 square foot 2-bedroom is going to get you more rent. So that's why you got to want to compare apples with apples here when you're trying to come up with your market rent. And then obviously also Craigslist is a good option too. But again, you want to find out what square footage you're dealing with.
Right. So this is also, I think, really interesting for you that are shopping for something. Look at, please submit offers with proof of funds, cover letter, FICO score, DU approval. What's DU approval?
Direct underwriting.
Right, so that you've really gone into a bank, like they don't mess around. And that's probably even on residential now and an up.
Yeah, everything is that. That exact
right.
sentence goes on everything.
Right, so everybody's got to do their homework up ahead of time. So I think that's about it on this listing. I would also.
Question.
Yes.
How do you guys feel about the HOA, the homeowners association?
Yeah, I noticed that. You hardly ever see that. This happens to be because it's Bixby Knoll and by the Virginia Country Club there.
Where is
that
it?
area there
Sorry,
probably
where
has
is
an
I
HOA.
saw it in the description.
Right there, right there. where it says community, under the community. See the blue letters? There you go.
35 a month, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't even catch that, right? So
You hardly ever see that. This is like an oddball thing, but
yes,
that's part of probably becoming, they probably have cheaper access to the Virginia Country Club that's right by there.
right.
The
But what's
golfing.
interesting is that that's my phone ringing. Excuse me. But what's interesting is that it has a pool. So for someone that wanted a pool, that could be kind of neat, you know. So there you go. That would be an interesting thing for somebody. All right. Another part that I want to go into that I haven't yet is this square footage part. I mean, when I'm looking at 7, 8 units or even like 3 units, which is what Kevin did, is like you look at how many square feet per unit. If we saw that this was 11 or 1,050 square feet and there are 2 bedrooms, which they are, I believe, they were our 2
Yeah,
bedrooms.
2 bedroom, 2 baths.
So I would wonder, you know, maybe I would look at this if I felt like doing the work. Maybe there's another bedroom in each unit. There could be 1,000 square feet could be a 3 bedroom.
Yes.
So I would look at this and say, maybe there's a wall to be put up and this would be a 3 bedroom. So if it is, I would want to go price out 3 bedrooms and see if this price works. And maybe that's the value in this building. And maybe that's the interest in it and nobody's seen it yet and it's at 820. And that's what I would go in and say, all right, great. I was making this 16.9 a month. And if I put in an extra wall, I'm going to be making 22,000 a year. This is all yearly. I'm going to really be, you know, hitting a home run with that. So that's one of the ways that I look at a building too, is there an extra room in there that I could possibly find?
And Leslie, there is a question from Guy in the chat. He says, no management fees on this property. What could one expect as far as management fees? What's typical?
Okay, thanks for your question, Guy, and thanks, Kevin, for bringing that forward. There are no management fees because I'm sure it's because the owner lives there, so he oversees it. But my experience is that it's usually like 5% of the income, or a management fee will do like $275. My old management company did $275 flat fee for my triplex, and I have one right now where they're doing $400 flat fee. Rick, does that kind of go with what you know?
Yeah, I mean, 5% right now on the bigger units, you're going down to 4%. When I say bigger units, I'm talking more units per building. It's easier for them. They'll give you a break there. But yeah, you know, somewhere between 4 and 6%.
Right.
And I personally, I think I use 6% on my spreadsheet when I'm underwriting a building, just to stay on the high end. And if you're able to get something cheaper, well, that just adds to your net income on the property.
Right.
But the deal that you have where you're going by unit a flat fee, it depends on who's doing that. But I normally just go with a percentage. It just makes it easier.
With something like this, just 2 units, would they give you that rate?
Yeah, I mean, the 6%?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you can get 6% easily on 2 units like this. Yeah. Especially if you get a local property management company.
So that's interesting. So you'd want to look into that, because my experience would be, and I haven't looked in that area, was that it was like 8% or much higher in any area that was out. Well, this is Bixby Knolls. You're right. We're back in Long Beach has lower property manager expenses. So I'd say in that Hawthorne property, wouldn't you say, Rick, it's be more like 8%?
No, you know, because the rents are going so high,
Yeah.
property managers are really competing against each other, and they're making what they were making 2 years ago on higher percentages, almost the same thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I haven't seen 8% lately. I've seen, you know, 6, maybe 7 on
Okay.
smaller units, or on duplexes, for example. But I'm sure somebody's out there paying 8%.
Luckily not.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go on to our next listing unless anybody has another question. All right, so we've got $1.5 million. This is on First Street in Long Beach. I think that's closer, just from my experience. First is going to be really close to the beach.
Yes.
$1.5 million, 4 units, so that you guys can see the difference in. This is price per unit. What's 4 divided by 1.5? 360,000 a unit, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So this is 360,000 a unit. It's less than that last one. That would make me think that last one in Bixby Knolls is probably nicer than this area though, right? Rick?
This one's close to the beach. I would personally would live in the Bixby Knoll area than this area here. Although people love this area because it's so close to the beach, but that's the part of I don't know. That's just me. I'd go to Bixby Knolls.
Right.
If I only had those two choices.
Right. And then rents, I don't know what the rents are different. So this was built in 1908. So that's interesting. I'm not a big fan of buildings that are that old. Like all the drains, there's a lot of this wood on the outside. I would probably already be like, I'm not interested in this because keep the upkeep of all this wood. I paint my buildings in Long Beach. I really keep my buildings looking good. And I can tell you the eaves are what give out, which is where the wood is. It's not even getting the sun. That's where I have to repaint, but the stucco will last a lot longer. So this all being wood looks nice and fresh now because they painted it, but I think wood's kind of a pain. Maybe this is all new siding. So we could read down Prime Alamitos Beach. So this is a big rental area in Long Beach that's close to the ocean. 1 block to the beach in Rose Park. So I have a building right by Rose Park. Park-like setting, serene, classic, fireplaces, 2 one-bedrooms. So let's look at the pictures. So it's all very classic for that type of renter. Looks like the original kitchen. So that doesn't excite me. All right, so we know it's kind of what we would expect. So now I'm gonna go down and map it. It kind of told us where it was. I know where that area is, but I'm just gonna make sure and go down and show you guys how wonderful it is. Whoops. Right, so it's right there. Between Hermosa, Gaviota. I own a building on Gaviota, just up from there. So my building, just so you guys know, is right here, like over in a little bit over this area.
Gaviota's right there to your right. There you go, right there.
Right. So I have a building there, and I have another building right here. So I have a couple buildings right in that area. But this is, again, when you know a certain area, much bigger, not as big a difference between there and there, but a really big difference being south of 4th and north of 4th. Right? You know, and 3rd is probably another big divider. And Broadway, if you're, are you west of Broadway? That's probably a big deal to be down here that close to the beach. All right. So you know that there's always different dividing streets of what's good and not. All right, let's do a little street view. I don't think that's correct, right?
No, that's the alley behind.
The alley behind it, I guess. Right. But what's interesting and what this tells you that I already know, it is all rentals down there. I kind of don't like it because of that. There's just so much competition. So you can see it's just an alley full of the back of apartment buildings. All right, so we're gonna say, let's look at this. I'm gonna go back up to the top. We're 4 units divided by 3,300 feet. How does anyone know that off the top of their head? How many square feet a unit?
3363 divided by 4 equals 840 square feet.
So maybe they're going to be 2 bedrooms. Now, if they say 1 bedrooms, which they do, then I would get excited because you guys, that's an average of 800 square feet. I would start talking to the agent and saying, how big is that 2 bedroom and how big are the 1 bedrooms? Because maybe there's a wall in there to make these 2 bedrooms. And now you have a studio. So there's a lot of slop on the square footage there. So I think this, Kevin. So this looks kind of interesting in a great area. So let's look at what the cap rate is in the gross multiplier. So 72,000. Do you want to do the math, Rick? Somebody else want to do that?
Yeah.
Kevin, 72,000 in income on a $1.5 million building. That's an expensive building.
72,000 over 1.5 million.
Yes.
That's 4.8% cap rate.
Right. So that's kind of what the going rate is in Long Beach. And so it's probably even a little better than some other buildings in Long Beach. And I would say it's a little better only because it's built in 1908. They have to price it a little bit better than other buildings to get you to buy this 1908 building, right? And then I'm going to read too. Is there like a house? Okay, real building with 2 1-bedrooms, 1 bath, and a single unit above the garage. It has separate and laundry. Units have been updated. All are in very good condition. 2 enclosed garage and 3 carports. So there's 5 parking places. I like that. Front house. So here we go. The front house is an oversized 2-bedroom, 1 bath. So that kind of tells you that probably there's maybe another bedroom or 2
Right.
in the front. And maybe these back ones are rightfully 2 1s, but maybe there's an extra room up here, which would make it more attractive. It's probably not going to make it a big home run, but you could maybe get a little bit of a value add. Okay. So if you took this same building and you took it and you said, okay, we're right by the ocean and everything, let's put it back in that Hawthorne area, right? It would be a lot less, the gross cap rate that he just said, 4.8 is the cap rate on the building. If you were going to take it to a worse area, you guys, the cap rate would be higher because you're getting more value for that amount of money, right? You get a higher cap rate would be better. You're getting a better deal. So this is kind of expensive, but priced, I think, accordingly for having a building that is built in 1908.
Right. Well, after I underwrote this one,
wait, Rick, can you explain what underwriting is?
Yeah, no, the underwriting basically means once you run real figures on this, taxes, basically taxes, insurance, your holdbacks because you should hold back money per year for repair and maintenance. And the usual rate is about $500 per year per unit that you want to hold back as a reserve account for that. And once you calculate $70 per unit for water, let's say, on 2s and 1s is roughly about that much per unit per month. Property management, you run it at 6%, and then trash, you're going to be paying for trash also, so that's about $1,200 per year. Pest control, if you're going to have like a maintenance service going there, is $50 a month usually. Gardener, $720 per year, or that's what I did on this one.
So what just to do a broad stroke, Rick, what was the percentage that would go out in expenses? Like
so on this one,
before, where did it fall in?
This one actually came in, because it's 3 units, it came in at 43%.
Wow,
to
so
include
that's high.
all that. Okay?
Yes.
And now that includes taxes, everything. And I come up with once you stabilize the rents and you get the rents, if they're assuming those are the correct rents, $2,750, $1,500, and $1,500. Give me a second here. This is I come up with a current cap rate of, a modified cap rate of 2.17. Okay? Yeah, 2.17 at this price.
Let's explain what he's talking about, modified cap rate. So he's saying that what they're saying their expenses are really not true. They're saying their expenses, is this correct, Rick? They're saying their expenses are this much a year, and Rick's done them himself, which he does for clients. So don't be afraid, because really, if you have a good agent like Rick, they run the numbers for you and they really break it down. But so it sounds like Rick is disproving this 14.5 and saying it's going to be much more expensive and you won't get that much cash flow, correct?
Right. And again, this is because it's by the beach. Now, there's a lot of things that on 3 units and 2 units people don't do. They don't hold back reserves for repairs.
And a reserve, let's just say a reserve is money that you kind of put in your budget to every month pull to the side to have painting and maintenance or capital improvements or capital expenditures on your building, right? So that's what that is. Okay.
Right, and then this also includes 3% vacancy rate. So after you put in all those numbers, all those calculations, you come up with a true cap rate on a building. And that's where then you start looking, okay, well, what can I do? Take the idea that Leslie has. You can add a wall to maybe one of the units and make it now rent for 3-bedroom versus a 2-bedroom.
Right. And let me just tell you what else I do sometimes is like probably on that last building. Let me go back here. Like on this, I would say, I think this was 2 units. I would go in here and say, oh my gosh, I'm going to put you can see my cursor. I'm going to put a fence up here and I'm going to give each unit a private yard. I'll put a fence around here or do something, or I'm going to take this might be the living room. What if I put French doors in here and they all have a private yard? So you can do things like that and make things much nicer and more rentable, and
Yes.
add value add, right? Okay, we're going to go.
There's a question in the chat from Guy. He says, is the required minimum money down on a rental unit / investment property higher than it would be for purchase personal use?
Yes.
Yeah, but Guy, if you can do an owner occupied building, then that's really ideal. You're going to get the least money down because you're the least risk. Of course, if somebody lives in the building and it's their home, they're not going to maybe abandon it. So the bank likes you more. You're going to get a better interest rate and you'd have to put less down. And it depends if you're a first time home buyer, if you're a veteran, anything else to add, Rick, or
FHA.
FHA?
That is if you can find properties in Southern California that would qualify under the FHA program.
FHA is a government program that has certain requirements for purchase and the buyer and the building. So that's what he's.
Yeah, you can get in with as little as 3.5% down plus your closing costs of 2%. So basically, realistically, it's about 5.5% that you can get into a product, but you must live in it, and they do check.
Right. So I'd say that this is a lot of parking spaces. That's a big deal. That's nice. I would have maybe even think, oh, maybe I can rent these out to neighbors. Really, that could be a source of income right there, is renting out these parking spaces at $100 a pop. Maybe somebody puts their old car in there with the plastic over it. So maybe you make another $400 or $500 a month. I mean, that would be a big boost to your income. So look, Rick's going to write that down in his numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go on to the last one, and we'll be quick on this one. It's 7:38. We're hoping to wrap up by 8 o'clock. Does anyone have any questions or want insight on something or anything before I move on to this lovely?
By the way, I liked that last one also because they had an 8,200 square foot lot. So the bigger the lot, the more you can do with it, the more imagination you can,
Right. Unless you're my friend Tom Green, who says, oh my gosh, stucco box, just give me a stucco box. If there's anything growing, I'm going to put concrete there. He doesn't want any maintenance on anything. So he'd look at, and I'm telling you right now, I'm spending money to trim trees. I did last year. I mean, I probably spend $3,000 or $4,000 a year on trimming trees at my buildings, maybe less.
Beautiful trees, Leslie. You're making the world a better place with the beautiful trees.
I know. I think so too. And my neighbor has a bamboo. Yes. Thank you, Kevin.
So just one question for both of you.
Yes.
Hopefully Rick didn't just disappear. But Rick, would you also be interested in it if it's 1908? That just seems risky.
You know what? It's on a case-by-case basis. I've seen a lot of buildings that look great. They've gone through them, put new copper plug. I just sold a unit. I sold 2 homes on a lot in Whittier. They were built in the 1920s, and the previous owner had gone through, put new plumbing, new to include the sewer lines. That one had brand new cabinets. He had redone the floors because over the years he had some termite rot. It depends on what stage you're buying it at. They're easier to work on, I will tell you that much, because they're usually raised foundations. So if you have any plumbing issues, everything's just right underneath the floor. And usually those older buildings, that raised foundation is about 2 feet to 3 feet high. and so it's real easy to work in there versus, buildings that were built in the 40s and the 50s where the raised foundation is probably 18 inches to at the most 24 inches. And thereby, whoever's doing your work is going to charge you more to get underneath there. But as far as, there's some really nice turn-of-the-century buildings all throughout LA that, in fact, the city doesn't want you to touch them or do anything to them without their permissions. That's the other thing you got to look at. Make sure you're not under some historical community.
There is I have two buildings that are in the historical part of Long Beach, and it's not it's that historical part of that city is not hard to work with. I've worked with them, and I'm going to get ready to work with them again on a planter. So
right, that's what you got to watch out for, is how difficult they are to work with.
So again, that's having an agent that knows the cities, and Laguna's terrible historical society. Mm-hmm. But I would disagree. I have a different experience with the older buildings, and I have not liked them. Like, I'd go to put flooring in the kitchen, and they'd pull up the flooring, and they'd go, well, all the plywood is rotted. We have to do all the subflooring. Or, oh, we did this in the bathroom, and we need to replace the toilet, but we found it's completely rotted underneath, because it's been there since 1908 versus 1960. So, the values in buying the old buildings and fixing them up, that's how, for me, that's kind of the insurance. It's how you get more cash flow. But it ultimately is like, do you have a stomach for that? Like, if you get the building for less and you say, okay, well, every time I turn over a unit, I don't get to just do flooring in the kitchen. I usually have to redo the subfloorings, but it cost me an extra $1,500. And overall, it's worth it because my units were less. It's just how you view and you get along with the maintenance and how you dance with it. I found it. I had a 12-unit building. It was built in 1996, and it was tough for me. They had stuccoed the building. They'd redone it and stuccoed it, so that helped. It wasn't wood.
In 1978 was the cutoff for asbestos use. What was the cutoff for things like lead?
I think lead's in all these buildings, but.
I want to say it was 1972, I think it was.
Okay.
I'd have to check to see what it is.
Okay. So let's move on here. So we're on to $1 million building in Los Angeles.
We do have one question, again, from Guy. He says, besides reaching out to Rick, smiley face, where could one find realtors, brokers, agents who specialize in finding apartment buildings / investment properties?
I think you really try and look for a referral from somebody. Ask a friend. You'll have, in this 2 to 4 unit range, there's residential agents that'll say, oh, I do those buildings, I can do them, and they can buy and sell them. They can't buy the commercial buildings. Like 5 units and above is a commercial loan. It's a different real estate agent that deals with it. Rick does both, and there's not a lot of agents that do both. But I say you have to go find somebody who specializes in units. And that's through asking somebody, trying to find somebody your local real estate club. I don't know where you live, Guy, but join a group like this, get recommendations.
There's a website called, I think it's Bigger Pockets. biggerpockets.com, and they do a lot of the commercial stuff, and they probably have a lot of referrals there also. The one thing it is, as soon as you get 5 units and above, it's the Wild West. Literally, you can't count on the type of loan you're going to get every time, because every lender is different. Some will require 25% down. Maybe it's fixed for the first 3 years, then it goes to some adjustable with a certain margin or index that they're going with, and some rely heavily on the income of the building and the type of building it is. Others most of them rely on it that way, but a lot of them rely on that plus your ability and your history and your background as been able to do this in the past. That's 5 units and above. 4 units and below is a lot easier. If you're starting off, I would suggest, if you can, if you find good deals at 4 units and below, that's where you want to start off. It's a lot easier. You can count on the interest rate being the same probably across the board.
Except it's a little like Cheerios. Like you buy the Grande box at Costco, it's less per Cheerio. And you
Right.
buy, you buy 2 units, they're more per unit. So,
Right.
okay, so I'm going to move on because we're at just want to move on with this. So we're 3,400 square foot, 3 units. So that again is probably a couple of bedrooms each. Well, I would guess it's got to be upwards of around 3 bedrooms each. 1947, it's $1 million, and it's in LA. So let's go to the map. Here, I think I can just go to the map there. Look at that. I don't have to scroll down. So where is this? So it's in, is that Culver City?
It's the mid-cities area there, Jeff.
Koreatown. So that's, all right. So then I would go in and go pretty
area.
So I don't love, I wouldn't personally look at this because looks like it's right on the busy street. You know, like I'll look at it now, but I wouldn't look at it as like I might buy that, likely, because this is too busy, and off of this, you probably even get the hum from that. You probably get a lot of pollution, which to me would sound like that. Yes, I don't live there, but I don't want people moving either, right? The other thing I really look at, and I haven't gotten into it, is if something's on an alley, I'm not very excited about it. Because you have people going through with shopping carts or whatever. There's just things happening, and people in units on the alley might move quicker. So
This one does have an alley.
It does. So see, this one I wouldn't be that excited about for the location and the alley, but we're going to take a look at it and see what it looks like. So, well, that's Arlington. So it looks like it
The other way.
might be this, right? We don't know yet. So
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
there we go. So
Yeah, it's that.
it's that, right? It's that dark one. Okay, so here we are. It's right on Arlington. Looks like it's got a cute backyard, 3 units, and we're gonna go on. I'm gonna move this over because I can't see. All right, 1940.
What's LAR1 zoning mean?
It's been rezoned, downzoned actually. It probably was an R2 at one time. 7,200 square feet. It might have been an R3 at one time where they allowed 1 unit for every 2,500 square feet. Now it's been downzoned to R1. In other words, if you tried to build units there in that area, again, they wouldn't let you. You could only build one house per lot or per 5,000 square feet.
Right.
Okay, so when you see R1, it's the same as LAR1, LA just meaning Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what I've forgotten to talk about is a lot of people look at this price per square foot. They're really into like, what's the price per square foot? I don't really look at it that way. Rick, what's your experience with people going in that direction?
Not a lot. I mean, I don't get a lot of people who ask that they'd like to stay within a certain price per square foot in an area. They're just looking at the bottom line, actually. How much rent are we getting versus how much did I pay for it? And especially if the units are already at market rents, that even plays less of a role.
Right.
However, you can look at it if it's a lower price per square foot in an area than something else, then that opens up the possibility of adding walls to it and putting more bedrooms. So the lower price per square foot, there might be something there.
Right. Okay, so it looks like they went up in the price. The original price was $850, and now they're $1 million. So that's interesting. They're not going to, let's see. So then we come down and let's look at the rents, right? Gross rent multiplier, they didn't give it to us again. And if you're in the buildings that are 5 units and above, you're really going to get the gross multipliers and the cap rates because it's more of a business worth versus these 2 to 4 units are more kind of owner occupied, and it's kind of a different standard than the commercial buildings in the listings. But again, like Rick said, you can't trust what they put in there anyway. But you can in some of the gross multiplier would make sense on the listed price. So you can look at that because that's just what's your income really making today against what's the price of the building. That's like non-negotiable unless the agent did their math wrong. Pretty true. Okay, so let's look at this. So we've got 3 units, a 4-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a studio. All right, and it said that there were 2 buildings, I think, 5 parking spaces, 2 stories, And I would look at it and do you know what the gross rent multiplier is, Rick? Did you underwrite this or no?
Yeah, hold on.
So the reason we need those numbers is to know, like, how is this building performing? So this is interesting. They're delivering it vacant, you guys. There's zero money coming in, and they're projecting that it would be this. So I don't know maybe in this description it says will be delivered vacant. Nope, it doesn't tell us anything.
Well, it says actual rent, total rent. I think there's just mistakes there.
Imagine that. Okay, so it looks like maybe they put down that there was a certain amount of, no, they don't have gross scheduled income anywhere, do they?
No.
No, right. So I don't know if these are vacant or not. It kind of would make me
So,
think maybe.
If we were to assume their pro forma numbers are correct, or what they expect the market, the gross rental income would be about 64,800.
Yeah.
And then, so you'd have a gross rent multiplier of 15.43.
So that's a really expensive building in a terrible area on a busy street. Like, Rick, that's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, and rent control to top it off.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it. They're delivering this vacant, and they went from 850 to $1 million, and so this is just somebody's totally missing the boat, and you don't even start to look at it.
Yeah, this has been on the market since it says December of 2017. So I don't know what they're doing there.
Yeah.
Their agent is not bringing them to reality.
Well, look at this.
Yeah, it looks like they might have tried to sell it before.
Yeah. So anyway, this isn't really, a player. So
yeah,
there you have it. So that's how you guys go through listings. Really, if you find a couple you like, your agent should be able to look at the underwriting on it, or maybe already has before they present it to you. Rick, or people like Kevin, and Kevin has been so generous to share that he's got a layout where you can put your own numbers in and come up with the gross rent multiplier and like that, and say, like, well, if I get $1,600 a month times 5 unit versus $1,500 a month times 5 unit, that's $500 more a month, which at times 12 is $6,000 more a year. How would, is it worth it for me to do this and that? You can really play with your numbers and what you want to put in it, and if you think your building can get that. But you also, that's why you have a good agent, is that they can do that. Otherwise, if you have a residential agent that kind of says, oh yeah, I can do it, but they don't really know numbers, like somebody like Rick or somebody like Kevin that's devoted to it, you don't have the support you need. And I'm all about having a really great support group. I mean, I don't think it's that easy to go out and buy or write a check for $300,000 for a building without having a great support group. So that's part of the reason we're in the Real Estate Masterminds, is to come in and ask questions and get references, just be a community. So, and have the support that you need. So I really, really encourage you, Guy, to find somebody who's been doing investment real estate to support you, and a whole team, wherever anybody else is that's hearing this. And if you're in LA, we all have great references for great people to work with you. Not that I'm not doing that because I'm an agent or referencing different companies because I'm tied in with them. It's just, we all want to share our information and support each other.
I have a question here from Kenyetta asking, what is the gross rent multiplier we are aiming for?
Kenyetta, it depends on where the building is. If you are in Beverly Hills, right smack in the middle of everything, you might be thrilled to have a 22 gross rent multiplier. If you're in the hood where my one building is, you'd have an 11 gross multiplier. Like, the buildings the gross rent multiplier is higher in comparison to how high the building is priced and what the neighborhood is. So even sometimes in Long Beach, block to block, maybe if you're familiar with Santa Monica, like west of Lincoln is a little nicer than east of Lincoln. So the prices change, and the gross rent multiplier reflects the price of your neighborhood. They change with exactly where you are. So you would go into a neighborhood and you would start getting the feel for it, like, oh, well, things in Long Beach and the old 60s buildings, like 6 units to 10 units, are running at about a 13 gross multiplier. So then if you and Rick go in and you say, oh, wow, here's one at 11, you know that's kind of a deal. But then you might go in and say, oh boy, it's, you know, everything's leaking and it's a wreck. But you know why it was priced that way.
Right. So just so I can add to that, so what you want to do is, what I do is basically, if you see a property, let's say in Long Beach, and you think it's a deal, you put it aside, and now you start looking, let's say in a 1 mile radius of all the buildings that have sold within the last 6 months to a year, and you look at what did they sell at and what was the gross rent multiplier they sold at. So you kind of want to come up with a baseline. Then you look at your building and you say, where does mine fit in on there? And that will tell you, based on the GRM, using that as a metric of whether you're looking at a good deal or you're not looking at a good deal. Same thing with the cap rate. You go across, you see what's sold within the last 6 months to a year within a, let's say, a 1 mile radius. And the same neighborhood too, because you got to be careful. Like Leslie said, some neighborhoods 1 block or 2 blocks away will be priced higher than another neighborhood. So you got to kind of know the area also.
For
But
sure.
you want to set yourself a real based on sold listings, not on what's on the market right now. Don't, as you can see, none of the gross rate multipliers that did come up or cap rates were accurate at all whatsoever.
Yes.
Okay.
So the other thing is you might go into an area and say, looks like they're running between 12 and 13 and a half is the gross rent multiplier. And you've got somebody priced at 14 and you go in and offer a price and you say, we think the gross rent multiplier should be 12 and a half. So here's my offer. I'm not going to give you this $1 million you're asking. My offer is 920 and that's at a 12 gross multiplier, and I think that's fair for your neighborhood. And here are the other comps, and this is why we're coming in there. Or your agent may present it that way too, back to the buyer and say, you're shooting for stars that don't exist. This is really these are the comps, and this is a very accurate offer on your building, and you should take this because it's based on fact and solds and not reaching for the stars.
Right, and then your lender, that's the second part of this too. When they go and they underwrite that property to give you the loan, especially above 5 units and above, they're going to do what I say I do is price what are what's the cap rates in that area, what are the gross rent multipliers in that area. They're going to use their numbers also, and they're going to see, and that's going to play a part as whether how risky is this property or this loan. So you want to kind of be in line with that.
Right. So it's now about 8 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for coming and joining us. It's really fun to go through this. I think it's so exciting getting listings and looking at them and pulling them up and buying buildings and, oh, can we put a fence there and a wall and getting in to see the units. Like, it's really an exciting thing. So it was fun for me to do this, this group with you guys. And I hope everyone got something out of it. Thank you, Rick, for joining us and everybody for their input. And I will see you soon. Happy investing.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Right.
Thank you.